Lola, you began your career in social work during the Depression years, and I think started in California. Is that correct?
That's correct. I always say that I stumbled into social work because I finished training to be a teacher of English or social science in high school or college, and by the time I got my degree to teach and the proper papers, the Depression was well along the way and I couldn't get a job. So as I say, I stumbled into social work by an odd connection.
That's pretty true of all of us who have been in for a long time.
That's right.
What year was your first job? In 1943?
Let me think. It was...
yes, it was.
I think it was 1943.
Yes, and you were working for the County Welfare Department, the Los Angeles County Welfare Department?
Yes. I had been asked to... I had been to a business college. I thought if I could get some business college training, maybe I could get a job. And I had learned to use a dictaphone, and one time one of my friends who was in social work called and asked if I would like to come over and substitute for one of the dictaphone operators. And I thought that would be a good experience, so I did, and I was with that one for 2 weeks and another one for 2 weeks. Then the management discovered I had a master's degree, which entitled me to become a social worker, which I had never even considered. And so that's when I started.
What were your first responsibilities?
At the Los Angeles County Department of Social Work, they were dealing with the people who were absolutely without any funding or resources because of the Depression.
Yes.
I did, at first I did some initial interviews. Got the basic material that we needed for that interview from the people who came in to apply. And then a social worker took it up from there.
Yes. And after working a little while, you realized you needed some specialized education in social work.
That's right.
And came to the University of Southern California School.
Yes, I did that partly while I was working. I would take night classes. And it took me a long time to finish my first year, which was then called, we got a certificate for a year of training.
Can you describe what the school was like? That was in 1944. What was the school like then?
Well, the school, I really got not much of a sense of the school as a school. I just was taking night classes for the most part, and and they were sort of courses that would give you some beginning understanding of what you would do as a social worker.
And the school was part of school sociology at that time, wasn't it?
That's right, it was.
And who was dean then?
You know, I can't remember.
Was it Dr. Bogardus?
Yes, it was Bogardus. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting, to know that later it was he who encouraged the school to set up a training program that would become a master's in social work.
Mm-hmm. And that's when they approached Arlene Johnson to become dean.
That's right.
And she wouldn't come unless it was a professional school.
Yes.
And to separate himself from sociology.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And he really encouraged her in that. And so when she did come, she took over as the head of the graduate school.
I see. How many students, do you have any idea how many were in school at that time?
No, I really I can't remember that kind of figure.
It was a long time ago.
It was a long, long time ago. But it seemed like plenty at the time, but I'm sure it's not as many as we've known since.
Yes. And Then after that training, you went to work for Traveler's Aid.
Yes, that was a wonderful experience for me. The war had broken out, World War II, and the USO Traveler's Aid was one of the agencies that dealt with newcomers in whatever area we were in, and since many people were coming to Los Angeles County, either because some members of the family were in the Army or the Navy or something out here, or it might have been people who were moving out here to try to find jobs. There was plenty of opportunity to deal with those people. So I joined Traveler's Aid, started out at the bottom rung, ended up with, some years later, with a national job, a regional job, but connected with a national office. So I got to travel not only around California, but when I was on the national job, I lived in San Antonio, Texas, and traveled all around that part of the world. And the travel job was as interesting and enlightening as working within an agency could be.
Yes, and when you were in the Los Angeles office, where was that located at that time?
Let me see if I can remember that. When I first started, I was working in an office that was in sort of South Los Angeles. I can't remember the exact address. Then I was asked to start an office in the harbor area, and it was in a place that was near San Pedro.
Yes.
And that's where I established an office and got to know what it was like to run an organization. And then, of course, it expanded beyond that eventually when I got the traveling job.
So mostly it was dealing with the families of servicemen?
A great amount of it was, but also with, in some instances, with servicemen.
Yes.
And so you were very, very conscious of the fact that there was a war going on because of the population that we dealt with.
Was that the same time that they were moving the Japanese into camps?
Yes. That happened during that period.
Yes.
Which I felt very bad about because I had Japanese friends from my high school days and college days, and I hated to see them shoved off because they were American citizens.
One of the sad days in American history, I think.
Absolutely.
No, absolutely. Then, following your work with Traveler's Aid, you decided to take more work in school, and you went to the University of Chicago?
To get my second year master's in social work. I had accumulated a year of social work study, but I thought if I going to stay in the field, I needed to get my master's in it. So I went to the University of Chicago, and then I was asked then, because I'd had quite a range of experience, I was asked to, by the School of Social Work at the University of Iowa, in that town, Iowa City, I was invited to come on the faculty there. They were just starting the school. And so I got to teach practice. It was called casework in those days. And also I supervised students in fieldwork.
That was the University of Iowa School.
University of Iowa School.
Was that
was the beginning of it.
That's a brand new school at the time?
Brand new school at the time. Wayne Basie became the dean there.
And that was located in which city in Iowa?
Iowa City.
In Iowa City, yes.
Yeah. That was a great experience because I got to see the beginnings of a school and learn from that. And my job became varied enough and involved me going around to different places. So it was a very good experience.
Yes.
And I enjoyed working with students.
Yes. Now, so you really had an experience in rural casework as well as
That's right.
urban and big city
That's right.
casework.
That's right. That's right.
At the University of Chicago, what was the school like at that time?
It was one of the top schools in the country at that time. Such people as Helen Perlman and a number of others who were very famous in social work in that day were on the faculty. And it was a very stimulating faculty. It had been one of the first schools like New York University to set up a school of social work that came to have national attention. And I couldn't have chosen a better place to go at that point in time.
Were the Abbotts still in charge then?
No, they were retired, but the next generation of teachers were expanding and spending more time not just in outlining social work as a profession, but also in concentrating more on what was involved in practice in terms of techniques and skills.
The dean then was Helen Wright?
Yes, That's right.
Yes.
She was the one.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a good organizer and seemed to get along with faculty well.
Where was your field work there?
Let me think if I can remember that. We had had students in a variety of agencies. Isn't that strange? I can't think of the specific names of them, but
yes.
It would be like the variety you would find in any large city.
Mm-hmm.
I found that I enjoyed teaching very much, and so I decided that if I were going to remain in the teaching field, I really should get some advanced training in social work. And the University of Chicago had what they called a third year. And so I applied for that, and after I had taught 4 years at Iowa, and I had that year, and then they invited me through a scholarship to teach there 1 year. And it was at the end of that period that I was invited to come to the School of Social Work at USC to be on the faculty there. I came to USC in 1955.
And after you came to USC, did you go back to Chicago for a period of time?
No, I had been on the Chicago faculty for that year just before I came to USC.
So you had a teaching fellow there?
Yes, a teaching fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't go back to Chicago or any other school. I stayed in Los Angeles and worked at the University of Southern California.
Yes. What were your impressions of the USC school when you first came?
Well, I was very, I had taken courses in my first year from such people as Norrie Class and the Dean, Arlene Johnson. And so I had some knowledge of the faculty at that time. But when I got back in 1955, there were many more faculty members. And so I made friends with them, and it was a bigger school, and I got to a much more expanded idea of a school of social work.
What were the courses you taught?
For the most part, in the beginning, I taught casework. I taught an occasional course on behavior, but I also did a lot of work with students. We had much more direct contact with our students in those days, students in fieldwork, students who were not only beginners, but maybe in their second year or were in graduate school working on a doctorate. And I had a lot of contact with students who were in these positions. I not only supervised some of them, but if they were in field work, in those days we had much more contact personally with the students that we were responsible for in various agencies where they were working. And so there was much more communication between the school and the people who were working with students in various agencies. And so that was part of my job, to have contact with the agencies that the students were in.
Where was the school located on the campus at that time?
On the third floor of what is the old main building.
The administration building?
Administration building. And there was no way to get up there but walk up the 3 steps.
That was
3 floors.
fondly called the attic.
The attic, yes. And I remember when the first time I arrived there, I was in a room with 4 other teachers. We didn't have room for separate offices in those days.
I remember well. Can you describe a little what the general campus was like at USC then?
Well, it was much more like what it had been from the beginning, although 1 or 2 of the first buildings had either been moved or torn down, and there was what now includes the administration building and other buildings built at that time. They were already up there then, and so that Hoover Street on both sides, with the library on one side and the administration building on the other, and other buildings along the way, represented the main buildings of the university at that time.
Uh-huh. The campus wasn't closed off from traffic and so forth.
No, the street wasn't closed off then. It was a through street, and so it was already, even then, a busy campus because of the traffic that's through, and then the increasing number of students at the university.
Can you remember the animal we had on campus at that time that represented the football team?
I've forgotten that one.
Old Tire Biter, the Airedale dog.
Oh, forgotten about them.
He lived out in front of the School of Social Work and would bite the tires as they went by. You had a great deal to do with field work as well as classroom teaching. Can you talk a little about the agencies and what they were like when you first started?
Well, I'm trying to remember which particular agencies I would be involved with. Probably, for the most part, family agencies or public agencies. Maybe 1 or 2 clinical agencies. Again, I might say that in those days we had much more direct contact with whoever was supervising students in the agency. So we made visits to the agency as well as inviting the supervisors to events on campus. And so I think there was a closer feeling in those days between the agencies and the school than has existed in more recent years.
So that all the teaching faculty carried some fieldwork responsibility.
That was the way it was in the early beginnings of my experience there. That tapered off, in time.
You do a lot in advising students too, didn't you?
Yes, and I know that I've had students from those early days that I've seen since who have made comments to the effect that it was a close association with me and with other faculty members that kept them there. Otherwise, they might well have dropped out because it was difficult and not necessarily all that they expected or more than they expected.
Yes. And
so that they felt very positively about the fact that they had some fairly close connections with certain members of the faculty.
Wasn't it in the 1960s that we started to get a much larger number of students from the minority groups?
That's right.
And one particularly being the Chicano or Mexican-American students.
That's right.
And I think you had a leading part in the development of services for them.
Yes, I was asked to teach a class off campus in East Los Angeles, where the majority of clients were of Mexican background or Latino background. And that was a wonderful experience. I taught over there 2 or 3 years. And students from who were to be assigned included not only Chicano students, but other students who were interested in that idea of how it would be to work in a particular kind of neighborhood with a particular kind of culture. So we had actually a variety of students in the class who would come from various backgrounds and life experiences, but predominantly the class members were people who had lived and worked in the east side of LA, which was at that time mostly Mexicans. It was we would have meetings at different agencies. We made a lot of field trips around to see what else was there besides a particular agency. We really kept in touch with what was going on there and what resources were available in that area. And the students seemed to be enjoying their work there.
Mm-hmm. What was your opinion of the Chicano students coming into school in general? Do you feel they matched up to the students that we've been having in school?
Well, I think many of them did. And many of them chose to come to SC because they realized that some things were going on there that would interest them, in terms of their own community. And they were really trying to seek out what would be expected of them in a professional role in that community. How could they make use of their ties to that community and that sort of thing. And so I had the feeling that they were positive about the experience.
Yes. While you were teaching, or during the time you were teaching at the school, you served on any number of all-university committees, and I wondered if you have anything to say about that.
Well, I think that it's important for faculty members in a graduate school where they're very much absorbed in their own business. I think it's important that they have some contact with other parts of the university. And for instance, because we were a graduate school, we never had undergraduate students. And so we didn't have very much contact with all the teaching that goes on at USC in the undergraduate area. And I might say that after I retired, I joined the Retired Faculty Association because I wanted more contact, which I hadn't had,
Sure.
with faculty members from all other parts of the university, and it has been quite a satisfaction to me to have a chance to be in touch with them now. But anyway, I was glad if I was chosen for one of the general university committees or organizations to be a part of that for a while, because it gave me a little broader view of the university than I would have just being a Minnesota social worker.
Yes. Among those assignments, you were on the All-University Senate for several years, and on the University Publication Committee. And those were important assignments.
Yes, I always enjoyed the assignments that I got.
Yes.
It broadened my own experience as well as giving me a chance to contribute something.
And in addition to serving the larger university, you also served a number of agencies in the community.
Yes.
Being a board member on what particular agencies?
Well, one of them has been the Family Service of Los Angeles. And I'm trying to remember some of the others, but I probably served longest on committee with the Family Service. But I did have contact with others too.
Yes. I remember your being on the board of the Los Angeles Psychiatric Services.
That's right. That's right, I
meeting.
was. That's right. One of the children's agencies I once had contact with. And so all of that sort of broadens the view of the faculty member who has that chance.
Yes. Your friends know you as being an Anglophile, and I wondered what particularly connected you with Great Britain.
Oh, it was a wonderful experience. I received a Fulbright teaching experience in 1961-62, and I was sent to the University of Leicester in England. And it was a valuable experience for me, and I think probably I contributed something to them. They had an undergraduate program in social work, but the year I was asked to come over, they were starting a graduate program. And I think they wanted somebody from the USA, and incidentally at that point in time, through Eileen Younghusband, who was the leader of social work in Britain at that time, the one who had the most voice and the most influence, she was very interested in what was going on in the United States during that time, and I'm sure that it was she who had some influence in getting me to come to the University of Leicester, because I had been on the faculty of a graduate school and had even had the experience of being was one when I was at Iowa that was just starting. And so my position there was Well, I didn't teach a class or two. It was more as an advisor and helper in the organization of the graduate school.
And you were there how long?
1 year, 1961 to 62. Then, in 1965, Eileen Young husband invited me, or had me invited, to teach for 6 months at the National Institute for Social Work Training, which they were just starting in London. And this was for people who had gotten into social work without graduate education, and a chance for them to get a little bit better educational experience for the kinds of jobs that they were going to be filling.
Yes. You frequently visit England now.
Oh, I still do. I go every few years and have many friends from those days who are still good friends. Some of them who come over to visit me in California, and I've seen them at international meetings and so on. And it's a very, very gratifying experience.
What might be some of the contrast between what you've observed in British social work and American social work?
Well, when they were starting in their setting up their graduate program, I think they were trying to model it somewhat on the U.S. model. However, the ways of working in Britain can be a little more formal than we have them here, and certainly there was an emphasis on study and reading and all of that kind of thing, as well as opportunity for them to have field work. But not, I wouldn't say any major differences, but just a little more formality to their ways of doing things.
Yes. Is there only one professional school in England?
Oh, no, there are many now.
There are many now.
Yes, many. Mm-hmm. And Leicester wasn't the first one by any means.
Oh, it wasn't?
No.
I've always misunderstood that.
No, it was, there had been a few other schools started, in London particularly.
Are there requirements to have a 4-year degree before you go into graduate work?
Yes, it's very similar to our situation.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, you retired from the School of Social Work at SC in 1973, and I know you've been active since that time in many ways. Would you like to tell us a little about what you do in retirement?
Well, actually, even though I was officially retired at age 65, because that's what happened in those days, at 65 out you go, nevertheless, the university allowed various departments to let the retiree teach a class or two for a few years later. And so I was still allowed to teach. In fact, part of my experience in the East Los Angeles area extended into my post-retirement days. And I was still allowed also to have contact with doctoral students and so on for 3 or 4 years. Actually, I was connected in one way or another directly with the school almost till 1980. Since then, I have kept in touch. I go over to the school. They send me mail to let me know what's going on officially. And when there are any special events, I am likely to get over there to attend, as are other retired faculty members. And I also have been quite active for several years now in a committee that's called the Heritage Committee, or the It's a committee that is working to accumulate materials about the development of social work as a profession in California. And at USC, we take care of the materials that are from Southern California. Berkeley does a similar thing with materials from the northern part of California. And that committee has been very interesting because we have accumulated some excellent materials from retired social workers or retired faculty members, and we contact various agencies to see if they have material that they think would add to our collection that would be historical material.
That's the California Social Welfare Archives.
That's right.
Program.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. And it's been a very interesting group, and it's still quite active. We're now, the people who started with it on the organization have stayed on since then, but now we are trying to get a lot more of the more recent faculty people, retirees, and people in various agencies who are still working in the agencies, because we think it's important to get more of them involved in this particular program.
Yes. You've had a long career in social work, and an interesting one, certainly.
I think so.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell about your experience that we might not have covered?
Well, I think we've covered pretty well the different aspects of my social work experience, but I would like to say that I certainly have never regretted stumbling into social work, that it has been for me a very interesting and stimulating experience, and with a wide range of different kinds of experience, and it is connected with the way the world is at any given point in time. And still there's plenty to do in that area.
Do you have any advice to give to today's practitioners or to the social workers of the future?
Well, I think I just now thought of something else that was a part of my experience, which I think is terribly important for social work and for our school. I was on the faculty when I first came on the faculty in 1955. The traditional courses were casework and group work and the history course and things like that. We, as a faculty, began to think that social workers out in the field really had to do a variety of tasks wherever they were. They weren't only, or they were not only just counseling individuals, but that by that time they were beginning to work with families, and that in any event, to work via agencies or with individuals or with families, one needed to have a wide range of experience to deal with different kinds of situations and problems. So we began to think very seriously about building what we called a generic program for the school. And instead of teaching casework separately and group work separately and all that, we put these various practice fields together in our course. And it was a generic course for a long time, for both 2 years, but later, at least for the first year, it was that way. And I think that is a very important thing for a school to support, because I think if we get too specialized and just learn one little piece, we aren't really being social workers, or we're not having the kind of experience and background to help us be more than just a counselor. And I think a social worker needs to be more than a counselor. There are all kinds of organizational needs in the field of social work, which requires a wide range of experience and knowledge. And it's just more, it's a better deal, I think, when the students come out of the School of Social Work with exposure to the range of things that social workers do or can do in the wide world.
Are you optimistic about the future of social work in America?
I'm not so sure right now. The national support that we used to get in social work seems to be being reduced. The money that's required for social work agencies and organizations is harder to come by. And I think that for a while we were becoming much more respected as a profession, but if we become too specialized, we won't be seen with the same kind of respect as the social worker has been in the recent past. And it would be harder to work with a variety of organizations that we need to deal with.
Anything else, Selby?
I can't think of anything else right now. I just know that I'm glad I had the experience. I look back on it with pleasure and interest, and I like to keep in touch with what's going on now.
Hope you will. And thank you.
You're welcome.
One correction. Professor Selby's first job in social work was in 1934 rather than the stated date of 1943. This is John Milner, having interviewed Professor Lola Selby in Los Angeles on the 21st of September, 1989.